Sir, it's good to have you on the show. Why don't you give me your general impressions of yesterday's press conference?
Well, yesterday was a bad day for America. It was a bad day for the American brand. It's a bad day for the American people because we believe stuff. There's a big difference between who we are and who Putin is. There's no moral equivalency. And so when you're on the world stage, you have the opportunity to explain who we are. And we believe in free press, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of protest. There's a whole bunch of stuff that flows from human dignity that Americans believe. Putin believes the opposite of that stuff. And he's terrified of people who believe in freedom, which is why that strong man does the stuff he does. He's a liar, he's a thug, he shot down a plane, he jails journalists, he kills people on foreign soil. There's no difficulty. This isn't complicated in explaining who we are and who Putin is. That's what needed to happen yesterday, and it's what needs to happen now.
What do you think about the president's approach of trying to establish a good personal relationship with leaders, many of whom we would disagree with on all of the things that you just listed, but that his approach is to try to establish a good relationship so then if negotiations have to get tougher later, he feels like he's on more solid ground to do that?
You know, I've spent a lot of time with the president, and interpersonally, he can be a really charismatic guy, and there are lots of good reasons to talk to people, including your enemies, but only if you're clear about who you are. And Putin is a thug, and he attacked America. That's not a Republican or a Democratic issue. A lot of the spies who risked their lives for our freedom around the world, they all know this. It doesn't matter what party they might vote for. Lots of spies don't even vote. There's no debate in the intelligence community about what Putin did in 2016 and about what he's doing with info ops and propaganda now and what he's going to do in the future. And so it's not a bad thing to meet with people who you don't agree with on every issue, but you start by being strong. You start by explaining who we are and what we believe. Man, we were weak yesterday on the global stage.
Let me ask you about this question of moral equivalence. You brought it up as part of your general observation. But a lot of people are saying, well, Russia might have meddled in our election, but so what? America has done that in the past, and therefore, I guess we deserved it?
Whoa, holy smokes. If you think there's no difference between the United States of America and Russia, there was an old line that was used by lots of people, but Reagan used to use it, that if you see a guy who shoves an old lady in front of a bus and another guy who jumps in front of that bus to shove the old lady to safety, and you say, what's the difference? They're both just people shoving around old ladies. You're a pretty confused individual. And when you look at the global stage right now, we're the people trying to save the lady from the bus. Putin's the person who actually shoves people in front of buses. And so there's no moral equivalency here.
The president does have his supporters, of course. Rand Paul tweeting or saying that Republicans that are making the criticism are either the pro-war Republicans like McCain and Graham or the anti-Trump ones like Sasse. They are motivated by their persistent and consistent dislike of the president. That was followed this morning by a tweet from the president thanking Rand Paul, saying, thank you. You really get it. The president has gone through a year and a half of totally partisan investigation. What's he supposed to think? There he is quoting Rand Paul. Is your criticism based on some sort of personal feelings about the president?
No, I don't dislike Donald Trump. I dislike Vladimir Putin, and I love America. And if you love American values, free speech, press, religion, assembly, right of protest, and redress of grievance, if you believe in universal human dignity for 7.5 billion people across the globe, you want to champion American values on the global stage. So I don't know what Rand's talking about, but it's kind of telling that by far the most isolationist member of the U.S. Congress is the one guy cheering the U.S. retreat from the global stage. I think that tells you pretty much all you need to know.
Senator Schumer is calling for Republicans to call for a hearing about what happened at this press conference or even at the meeting overall. Is that something you think is necessary?
I think we'd like to know what happened in that private meeting. It's pretty unlikely that you say as goofy and bizarre stuff in front of the cameras that goofy and bizarre stuff wouldn't have happened behind the scenes. But I think the Congress has ceded authority for decades. This is an incredibly weak institution. There are a whole bunch of people who like to wander around in this place and have people call them senator and pat them on the back. And there's a whole bunch of people who want a Monday morning quarterback. I don't know about the process of any of that political gamesmanship. But what I care about is that both branches, all three branches of government. The president, by the way, has done a great job in nominating Brett Kavanaugh for Article 3 for the Supreme Court. But the first two branches of government, Article 1, the legislature, and Article 2, the executive, ought to both be championing out and trumpeting the great message of who Americans are and what we believe. And we ought to be clear about who Vladimir Putin is and why he invades Ukraine, why he invades Georgia, why he committed cyber attack against Estonia, why he's trying to meddle in elections in France and Germany today, why he's involved in propaganda info operations in the U.S. today. None of this stuff is hard. So I don't know the tit for tat of the fallout for Helsinki, but what I really care about is that we failed to articulate American values to a watching world yesterday, which matters for our kids, and it matters for human rights activists around the world, and it matters for our allies. What was failed to be communicated yesterday needs to be communicated today and tomorrow and going forward, because it's who we are.
All right, Senator Ben Sasse, I know you've got a busy afternoon and an appointment on the other side of this. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation.